Hello, and welcome to episode 56 of the Great Canadian Hockey Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Aiden Sarah, and I'm also here after we have a Stanley Cup champion. Aiden, the Florida Panthers are Stanley Cup champions after knocking off the Oilers in 7 games. I know we didn't necessarily need to hop right into it, but this is a hockey podcast, and the Stanley Cup was awarded. Realistically, nothing else is more important. How are you feeling, fella? How are you feeling about that crazy 7 game series? That thing was all over the place.
It was all over the place. It was awesome, wasn't it? Like,
Yes,
and
yes.
and and I totally, fully just like I had totally bought into this Oiler team too, which
Mhm.
helped the excitement, right? Um, ugh, it really feels like whoever lost the series, it's almost like they lost it to themselves a little bit. Like for the Edmonton Oilers, it was not getting a result in the first 3 games made the fact that they won 3 straight games ultimately meaningless. And for the Florida Panthers, it was just the fact they couldn't close it out that was shooting themselves in the foot a little bit. Um, Game 7 was like a little bit underwhelming, but it was still close. It was still exciting. You still had a lot of exciting parts of it. And to me, I'm just happy this wasn't a 4 or 5 game series ultimately, right? Like at the end of the day, the Oilers lost. I did want the Oilers to win. I said that during our preview. So it sucked that they lost. Um, but they really made a series out of it. And games 6 and 7 especially were electric. I couldn't believe how that series, how we got that out of the start of the series. I wouldn't have called that.
I have 3 points to cover about this Cup Finals before I completely lose my train of thought and every single portion of this. Um, I thoroughly enjoyed every game in this series for damn near a different reason, but I will say I believe my favorite was which one was the 5-3 win for Edmonton? Was that game 5 or game 6?
It definitely wasn't game 4.
Yeah, yeah.
Was
Okay.
it in Edmonton or Florida? What are you talking about?
Uh, it was in Florida. Okay, okay. All right. I can dive into this even better now because I remember why I love it the most. The Sportsnet intro that was used, Wake Me Up by Evanescence. So
Yeah,
it
I saw
it
that.
slowly teeters its way in with the high pitch vocals that I mean most people are somewhat familiar with. And then as it kicks in and the chorus kicks in and the drums pick up, Matthias Janmark scores and he's celebrating as it's going, "Wake me up." And you just see the most Edmonton biased intro you could ever see to a game. But I was watching it next to my diehard Oilers friend, Fan Pierce. And he was actually in the bathroom during the intro. And so I had to rewind it, replay the intro. Aiden, I got chills twice. I've seen a lot of great cup final intros in my life. That was probably number 2 or 3. It was that electric. It was natural chills right off the bat. I wasn't expecting anything too crazy. Sportsnet absolutely killed it with that one.
Yeah, we've had these conversations before about our favorite video intros, and th that's kind of an example of why I really got so fired up about this final. And
Mhm.
the end of the day, like it was, the whole playoffs we can crap on and we can make fun of how stupid that Boston Pizza ad was, just like everybody did, because it was dumb. But at the same time, when push came to shove, I really wanted Edmonton to win, and I think Oilers fans did Canada proud in terms of their support and their engagement with this series. Um, I was really happy I was really happy with the fact that it really felt like a Stanley Cup final where a Canadian team was. You could tell. And I think especially by the end of the series, it felt like there was a lot of buy-in of support wanting the Oilers to win. Again, it sucks. It sucks they didn't quite get there. talking about the series as a whole, it was what's funny is it was obviously you can say it was the tale of it was two different series, right? Within one. It was the one where the Panthers dominated, then the one where the Oilers dominated. But what's kind of funny to me is Edmonton honestly play I thought Edmonton played 7 good games. And it's not that I'd say they were better than Florida throughout, but I was really impressed with like how hard they competed with a Florida Panthers team that I still maintain on paper is like a real significant cut ahead of the Oilers. Like Florida on paper, when it was 3-0, that was kind of yeah, that's how this series should be going, right? But Edmonton really just made something out of it. And um,
How about Connor Brown?
how about the bottom six of the Oilers, man? I've been pumping Matthias Janmark's tires this whole season, and finally he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna start scoring now. I'm gonna start producing." Brown, Janmark,
And Henrique, that was a line at the end.
yeah, Adam Henrique
Yeah.
played well. I thought Warren Fogle got a little bit more attention finally. I kind of thought he'd been the unsung hero for the Oilers all season.
Well,
Crucial.
He's a wild card. You don't know what you're gonna get every time he gets on the ice. They inserted them back into the lineup after keeping him out for a few games. Immediately takes a 5 in a game,
Yeah, that's right.
and then the next game he goes and scores. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the kind of thing where you need to have those chaotic individuals on your team. You want to have that. That adds flavor, that adds bite. And even when that guy gets 5 in a game, they killed off that penalty and they wanted it even more. I don't think I saw them want it in that series until they killed off that 5. But yes, the Matthias Janmark drum, you've been beating it. I've been beating this one for years because I've had to watch him play for Dallas. I've had to watch him play for Vegas. I've had to watch him play for Edmonton. Two of those three teams have put the Colorado Avalanche out. Matthias Janmark is
And
a
the other
flavor saver of a guy.
and Colorado did play the other in a playoff series.
Yeah. Matthias Janmark is a flavor saver in hockey player form. I don't need to elaborate further on that because it
I
just
was gonna say I don't even want to like I don't want to hear it. Like I won't push back on it simply so I don't have to hear about it anymore.
it's
I'll
not
let,
anything weird. It's
I'll let
just
that
that he
comment.
leaves a lasting impression, regardless of whether you want it or not.
um, Going to Florida, like Florida's. We just talked about unsung heroes. We talked about guys stepping up. Nico Mikkola, hey,
Really solid.
oh,
Really solid.
super solid. Like he performed. He showed up in a big way. I thought. Oliver Ekman Larson,
Yep.
likewise.
Yep.
He had a great series and a solid playoff all around. Um, yeah, the Panthers did it by committee on the back end. You didn't have somebody like a Brandon Montour running the show. I thought Gus Forsling was their best defenseman throughout the playoffs.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
he
probably.
he was, he was crucial, especially I thought in that series against the Rangers, where Florida was able to kind of hold New York's offense from the defensemen to nothing, and then it was Forsling that was, kind of the difference maker when it came to producing from the back end in that series. Um, but the Panthers, at the end of the day, like I think they deserve a lot of respect for winning that game 7. Like I know I know they had to win or they would have been, the biggest failures in NHL history. But you're facing down Connor McDavid and the Oilers who have just won 3 straight games and if you take an aggregate score of those 3 straight games, they spanked you overall. And you show up, you play hard, and you get the win. I thought that was awesome. Carter Verhaeghe and Sam Reinhart, two guys that do everything right and rewarded with a couple goals in that game 7. Um, it's funny. Like I've been talking about Edmonton's goaltending forever too. Stuart Skinner showed up in that Stanley Cup final. In the losses, he was good enough to, I didn't think any of those losses in the final were his fault. Pretty much after that series against Vancouver, he figured it out. He snapped back into place and he was great. Sidney Crosby, Wayne Gretzky. What do those two guys also have in common, James? We're a little bit short on time, so I'll tell you. They lost their first Stanley Cup Finals, and then they won the following year. So you can make the case that Connor McDavid isn't I don't think he's gonna be. I don't think he's gonna be away from this stage for long. I think Edmonton will be right back here because you have the primes of not just McDavid and Draisaitl, but as much as I've called Evan Bouchard's defensive prowess into question, there's no denying that his offensive ability is a huge help to that Oilers team. Ryan Nugent Hopkins has had the 2 or 3 seasons in a row where he's looked like a bona fide top line player, and Zach Hyman just scored 55 goals. I don't think there's a reason why, with some good tweaks in the offseason, some a little bit of help coming into Edmonton, that they're not able to run with the best of the Western Conference again and try and get back.
And most of those guys are going to be back next year as well because you look at all the big fish on that team, none of them are expiring this offseason. There is no fear right there. Yes, obviously a lot of minor things are going to have to change. And the year after, pretty scary. That's there should be some worries there for Oilers fans. There is a timeline here if they don't manage to get everyone signed, but I mean, alas, great finals. That's all you can ask for. I mean, another thing we were able to check off that was, I think, maybe on both of our wish lists when this playoff started. A cupless vet won a Stanley Cup. Congratulations to Mr. Kyle Okposo.
Yeah, that was awesome. I'm glad he got it early too. I think it went Barkov, Bobrovsky, Okposo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah,
good order.
and even in the same vein, Paul Maurice, did you watch
Oh
that
yes,
post-game
loved
interview?
it,
Oh,
loved
man.
it,
Oh,
loved it, loved it, loved it. Huge for Paul Maurice. I mean, Paul Maurice, yes. I'm probably happiest most for Roberto Luongo. Just
yep, totally.
he gets his ring. He contributed to this team as a member of the management. Sergei Bobrovsky caps what I believe to be a Hall of Fame resume officially.
Yeah, it's a lock now.
Yeah, it is.
It's a complete lock. If anyone debates that, I don't want to hear the argument.
No, I don't think there is a valid argument against it. I was gonna say Connor McDavid, Conn Smythe, right choice.
Totally, totally. I mean, I think it was a pretty clear-cut favorite. You could hear the broadcast team talking about, you know, maybe it still could go to Bobrovsky, but honestly, man, when a player has that ridiculous of an effort through playoffs, top to bottom, the point production, Aiden, insane. Anyone who eclipses 40 points, I think it should just be a lock, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. Yeah.
And unless they have a 5 assist game like 3 times, but other than that, they're pretty bad. Like I think it's the kind of thing where I often found myself lightly cheering for the Panthers. I was cheering for good hockey. When I was watching Game 7, I cheered loudly for all 3 goals at local public eatery in River District while demolishing a beautiful plate of nachos on my birthday. Yes, I got to watch the cup get awarded on my birthday. Amazing. One of the best feelings. But I don't think there was ever any doubt in my mind that Connor McDavid deserved the Conn Smythe more than anyone. There were a lot of people faulting him online for not coming out to
I
pick
was
it
I
up.
was I was about to go there. Um, Two things.
I'm I'm not faulting him. It would have been nice to see. I'm not gonna fault him though.
No, I'm actually gonna like defend him completely, to honestly. Um, because to me, I two things. Number one, on the ice, I kind of thought that was Florida's party.
Yeah, agreed.
Like I'm sorry. At the end of the day, like he shook everybody's hand. He was respectful, but that's a Panther party, and if I'm McDavid, I honestly just don't want to go out there because, well, at the end of the day, it's the team celebrating their Stanley Cup win. Like, um, the Conn Smythe is important. Like, I love it as an award. I love talking about it, but at the end of the day, like nobody cares at that point, right? In that moment, nobody cares who won the Conn Smythe. Nobody cares to see it awarded. I totally think Gary giving his spiel and then presenting the cup to Barkov was fine. Number two, had McDavid hypothetically gone out there and got the Conn Smythe, he's not taking that into the room. At the end of the day, that dressing
No,
room for the Edmonton
no.
Oilers, that team is together. That's their captain, and he's in there. He's in there doing his job as a captain, right? He's hoping he's doing his best to pick his teammates' heads up, right? Like I it's to me, it mattered to nobody. It wouldn't have mattered to the Oilers team. It wouldn't have mattered to McDavid, and it wouldn't have mattered to the Florida Panthers. So I totally have no problem with him not coming back out. Like, and I totally think that there's a little bit of silliness to suggesting that it was malicious or classless or anything like that. That's yeah, that's I strongly disagree with that sentiment.
Aiden, I've got one more thing on that one before I move on. The most iconic photo from Jean-Sebastien Giguère's career isn't him hoisting the cup in 2007. It's him holding the Conn Smythe after being named MVP when his Mighty Ducks of Anaheim lost against the New Jersey Devils in 2003. I don't know if it was McDavid's choice to not go out,
But I get it.
but
I would get it if it was.
you know, if I'm his best friend or teammate right there, I'm telling him, you don't have to go out there if you don't want to. You're going to take a better photo one day.
Yeah, totally.
Moving on, we have a couple trades to address. And just to give you guys a little precursor, later in the episode, we will be starting our mock draft with a recurring guest of ours because, as you may or may not know, the NHL entry draft in 2024 at the Sphere in Las Vegas is very rapidly approaching. So we're gonna have to do some coverage on that because, as you guys know, we are nerds and we love our prospects. But as I said before we get there, few trades. Aiden, which one do you want to start with?
Yeah, let's start with the Washington Capitals making a little bit of a little bit of a let's start with the Washington Capitals making a major boo-boo here, James. Um I don't get it.
I do.
Yeah, no, I mean there's an angle. There's a
I've
I
got two angles.
yeah, I can kind of see the method of this madness, but to me it is and it was borderline madness indeed. Um so the trade Darcy Kemper to the Los Angeles Kings, Pierre-Luc Dubois to the Washington Capitals. You go. Take it away.
All right. First point. Well, actually, precursor to everything because I am not listening to any of my instruction that told me not to ever preface anything. Um, Pierre-Luc Dubois had an awful season after being traded to the LA Kings last summer and signing a massive ticket. What was it? 8 years, 8.5 per?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sweet. I'm glad I remembered that. Otherwise, that could have all quickly derailed itself. Um, he was bad, Aiden. You know just as well as anyone else did. And he knows just as well as anyone else did. He answered to it at the end of the season in his end of season presser, and it was not pretty. He said, I played terrible. I need to be better for myself. I need to be better for my teammates, and I need to be better for the LA Kings. Well, now he has to be better for the Washington Capitals. And, you know, there might not be as much pressure. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but the dude played his best hockey, I think, during a stretch in Columbus that didn't have a ton of pressure. He had a pretty decent stretch in Winnipeg as well, but I mean, there have been bad parts sprinkled around. I shouldn't say sprinkled. There have been a lot of bad parts in his career where he's underperformed. Um, this guy has the makings of a perfect power forward. I'm not so quick to dismiss the rest of his career yet, and I think he's heading to the perfect destination. Do you know why? Do you know why he's going to the perfect destination? Well, I'll answer before you do. Because in 2 years, Alex Ovechkin will not be there. John Carlson might not, probably won't be there, and if he is, he won't be super effective. TJ Oshie's gone. Probably. I mean, unofficially, but probably. Nicholas Backstrom, done. Probably, but not officially. There are a lot of pieces exiting out the door, and we have a cap floor in the NHL. If you're worried that Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to be bad, hello, top three pick, because he's played on your first line. And if he's not going to be bad, then you just got a good player for a goalie that you just picked up in free agency a year prior that wasn't working out. This is a swing for the fences. that could work out great, bad, or somewhere in between. And it doesn't matter because every outcome checks off a box for the Washington Capitals. And like I said, for Pierre-Luc Dubois, yes, it's not a dream scenario. A dream scenario would be living up to the expectations from before. But what it is a fresh start with not a lot of pressure. Hello, cap floor, and hello, chance at success. Bang.
Okay, here's what I've noticed about Pierre-Luc Dubois. If he is unhappy, it's his effort is non-existent. So my question is, for the next 7 years of playing for a team that I don't think is gonna sniff a competitive window, how happy is he gonna be? Like, I totally think that this player needs to be happy to get, not just to get the best out of him, to get something good out of him, ostensibly. That's my 2 cents. And um, for the Washington Capitals, like yeah, so he's gonna get to play within a mobile Alex Ovechkin for 2 years, and then have nobody around him, right? Like, because here's the thing, James, Washington is still not tearing down and rebuilding, right? They've started the little they traded Dmitry Orlov for futures. That's great, but they still are not willing to do that right now. And I'm not going to get into whether or not that's a good idea because you and I
Because
are,
we all know where you stand.
yeah, it's bad. But the fact that they're not doing it means that this window of not being very good is just going to be longer. And so you have 7 years of Pierre-Luc Dubois where I really don't see Washington competing within 5. So you're paying this guy $8.5 million for 5 years to why?
Because someone has to get you to the cap floor
Yeah, no, I get it. It's
and
just
give fans and writers some optimism to cover. Aiden, you are a follower of sports. You are not building this organization. Look at it from the owner's point of view. This all works. Everything you just said, every bad thing you just said, checks one of the three boxes.
LA have been desperate for a goaltender for a while now. And I think Darcy Kemper had an unusually bad season last year in Washington for his standards. He was way better in his first season with Washington. The guy's 34 though, so I look at this as from an LA perspective, and um, if you're the Kings, you're desperate for him to be good enough, right? You can't have uh, a scenario going where you're paying a goalie this much money and you need to pay another one, right? Like he needs to be the starter. He needs to at least be a 1A. Um, yeah, I thought it was a little bit odd for both teams. The other thing, if from a Washington standpoint, LA would have been desperate to move that contract, right? I feel like if the Kings were if Washington was willing to take Dubois, I get it. They probably needed to move Kemper for salary cap reasons. I would have tried to get an asset out of LA for taking Dubois because I think the Kings really needed to move him. That's my other gripe with Washington doing this. That's it for me though on that one.
Last note about Kemper for me. When healthy, that guy tries his hardest every night. I have a lot of respect for him. Big fan. Moving on to the next deal. Aiden, Jacob Markstrom is a New Jersey Devil. How do you feel?
I mean, we I know you and I have talked about this possibility. It seemed like the perfect fit. I kind of thought that New Jersey's first round pick was going to be in play this year to acquire a goaltender, the one that's 10th overall, just because the Devils, they don't need a young star as much as a bunch of other teams need young stars, right? They have a very solid young core and they're in win now mode. So getting somebody for the future doesn't make as much sense for them as some other teams that would want to pick around that spot. Um, the Calgary Flames, though, James, have done a really good job of amassing a bunch of young defensemen through trades now. Like every trade they make seems to involve a young defenseman. I really like Kevin Ball, man. Like I saw a bunch of people like doing the oh, who's that guy? It's like, well, I mean, he's Kevin Ball. Like he's 6'6". He
He is Kevin Ball.
played 82 games with the Devils last year. You're like, oh, who's that guy? Like, dude, he's 23 years old. He's massive. He's smart, and he's a good play killer. Like, I have nothing against picking this guy up. I totally, totally think this is going to be either a second pair guy or a third pair guy for the Calgary Flames for a long time. Like that's a very good pickup. If you're Calgary, you move a veteran Markstrom who is probably as valuable now as he ever will be. Period. And you get a first round pick next year out of it. The pick's only top 10 protected too. So if
The
New
Devils
Jersey,
will be back in playoffs next year.
I think they will too, but no matter
Probably.
what, they'll be better. So
Yeah.
I think your pick is 10 to 25, and I think that's good value for Markstrom. I got no problem with the trade for either team. I don't think New Jersey overpaid. They addressed the goaltending need. Calgary continues to be smart, and by be smart, I mean realize that their competitive window is probably not what they envisioned it right now, and they're trading away some valuable or skilled pieces to amass assets for the future, which seems like a lot more simple than sorry, it seems a lot it seems too simple for the number of teams that neglect to do it. But Calgary and the Calgary Flames ownership has to be commended for not falling into the sunk cost fallacy of, oh, we're paying Jonathan Huberdeau this much, we're paying Nazem Kadri this much, we might as well try and compete. It's like, no, actually, you might as well pick top 10 for as long as you possibly can. Actually, that's how it goes. Um, yeah,
Jacob
what
Markstrom will be 35 on January 1st of 2025.
January
Um,
31st, I think is
we just watched a 35-year-old Bobrovsky win a Stanley Cup. 35 is not too old for a goalie. I saw a lot of people online saying Markstrom is too old, he can't play. He is still a great goaltender, and he has 2 years left on his contract, so pretty low risk.
yeah, totally. And to me, like I look at him and I think, well, if he's going to be worth 6 million bucks, he's going to be worth 6 million bucks for the next 2 years. Like you have him for as long as you'd want to have him for that number for sure,
Mhm.
without a doubt. Blast trade also involves a goalie and it screams massive underpayment to me, James. Holy
Really?
crap. Yeah, really. This is a guy who won the Vezina trophy 1 year ago. Mark Kastelik, Jonas Korpisalo, and a 2024 first round pick from Ottawa to Boston. That first round pick, James, is not Ottawa's own first round pick, being the seventh overall pick. It is a pick they had previously acquired in the 20s of this draft. I should know this.
25, I believe.
25, I think, is right. Yeah, because we just did the mock draft. Um, Mark Kastelik, I don't know. What can you say about Mark
Money.
Hastelik? To me, it's a throw in, right? A little bit. Like I'm not saying that Boston might not have wanted this guy, but he's ostensibly a throw in. You've got Jonas Korpisalo, who had a tough year last year, not a very good season at all. Making 4 million bucks till 2028. Like I kind of thought Ottawa might have to pay somebody to take this Korpisalo contract. Uh, I, Olmark's 30. He's got one more year at 5 million bucks. I don't know, James. I totally think Boston should have got more for this goaltender. I don't know. I don't know if
I
I'm
don't
wrong.
think they had a ton of leverage because everyone knew they wanted to trade him, and I think they were very limited in where he would accept a trade too, because I think a lot of the teams that wanted him may have been on his no trade list.
I thought he waived it for Ottawa. Am I wrong?
I don't believe so,
No.
but could be. Yeah, I'm pretty confident that they have already tried to trade him to other places and it hasn't worked. And he has said no, or the package wasn't right. So, they got their first rounder, they got a depth player, and they have a backup goalie who has been very good in the past. And with 25% retention, I believe that's what it is, and still being 30 years old, I'm not really mad at what he can provide.
And
I mean,
Ottawa gets a goalie, man. That's huge. That's
yeah,
what they needed. Like for the Senators, again, feels like every year I'm like, I think Ottawa's going to take a step, and then they suck. But maybe this year with a goalie, maybe it truly will be the Senators step forward. Everybody's got to stay healthy, but Olmark will contribute greatly to that. Casey Middlestat was perfect in the second line center spot for Colorado. That was what I had. That's what I've been thinking as I was waiting to see if the guy got extended. And sure enough, Casey Middlestat will be a Colorado Avalanche. Oh, I almost said long term. It's 3 years, right?
Yep, 3 years at 5.75 million per. I'm pretty happy with the amount. I think with the cap going up for a second line center that's not a point per game or close to, I think that's about as cheap as you're gonna get one.
Yeah.
So I mean, unless a guy develops into that while on a cheaper contract, I think he got paid what he's worth. And I'm really happy to see how he gets used to Colorado's system. As I've covered on this podcast before, it often takes a little bit of a little bit of time for players to adjust. It's not an instant thing. And I think with a training camp coming in, he's going to be a really effective player for the next few years. Um, Colorado has another 10.4 million in cap space left. So what they do with that, I have zero idea, but that's a conversation for another day. I'm just happy with that contract, and I'm happy that the second line center search doesn't have to be extended.
Yeah, that was a good thing to that was a good box to check, right? Especially
Mhm.
with a 25-year-old who, yeah, is in the prime of his career. You
Yeah,
can,
could he could keep getting better.
yeah.
It is
Oh,
still possible.
he's a great player. Like I totally thought that, we'll talk about it a little bit with Jeremy in a bit when we have him on to do the mock draft. But I totally think people are too soon to call players busts. But I did not think Casey Middlestat was going to hit his potential. I thought that for him to be an NHLer, he was going to have to carve out a way to be effective in the bottom six because it didn't seem like he was going to be good enough to be a top six forward. But man, the last 2 seasons he's just gone out there and he's said, no, I am an NHL stud and I'm gonna be that. And that's it's it's fun to see this player it's fun to see this player come together after we saw so many flashes of it when he was young, all the talent he had and this feels right.
Definitely, Aiden, definitely. And one more thing before we move on to what Aiden has teased you guys lightly with, and what I've also teased you guys lightly with. The Winnipeg Jets have signed Dylan DeMello, a nice, dependable defenseman of theirs, to a 4-year contract at 4.9 million per. Some people might gawk at that annual average value there. I don't, because we just went up by $4.5 million in cap space. He just got paid the bump in cap space. There you go. It's done. But yeah, that's all I've got for that one. Aiden, I don't really think you have anything to add on that contract signing. He's a dependable player. But moving on to our guest after this break. All right, and joining us now, we have our wonderful, I don't know if I'm going to call him an inside scout, but we have our scout for our draft rankings from McKean's Hockey. We've got Jeremy Plord. We're welcoming in here to break down what we've got for the first round, what we think it's going to look like. Because to be honest, this is a pretty exciting draft. So, Jeremy, welcome to the show. Welcome
Hi
back.
guys.
Last year was a killer episode. How do you think this first round's looking just before we break into the players?
Oh yeah, it's a very unique draft this year. I've got about a long tier that stretches through about my 50 sorry 80 18 rank, and then everything about that after that is just it could be anybody. It's a very wide open draft. We always talk about Celebrini being the clear first cut. After that, man, there's just two big tiers for me. It could be anybody there. It's a very fascinating draft.
How much variance, Jeremy, do you think there could be between 2 and 11? Because that's by far the most interesting stretch for me is how those players are going to end up falling.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's again, it's very wide open. Last year, we could see we had Connor Bedard at the first overall spot, but then we still had a overall decent idea of who would be there. Would be able to talk about Fantilli, Carlson, Will Smith, all these guys being like clearly a little step above everybody. I don't think there's any of that this year. We're gonna get into it more in detail. Aside from maybe Demidov, that seems right now to be clearly not clearly, but leading towards being the consensus second best player. It's not even sure Chicago drafts him. There's a ton of very interesting guys. The order could be very, very mixed. I think the mock drafts this year will be in a couple of years' time, they'll look completely off. Sorry, not a couple of years this year's time, but after the draft, they'll look completely off.
But just before we dive in, I got one more question for you. How do you feel about the draft at the Sphere? Do you like the big event, or did you kind of prefer how it was before?
Oh yeah, well, obviously the Sphere, it's going to be the last event of in-person drafting. That seems to be the case right now. I found it pretty unfortunate. Myself, I was there in attendance for the 2022 draft. It was an amazing experience. The first day I spent it outside with the fans. It was truly amazing. Had a lot of fun. Um, the second day I was inside because just I the tickets were less expensive. But yeah, both outside and inside, it was an amazing experience. I wish they continued to do this, but from a practical standpoint, I understand why they don't. But yeah, this fair will be a unique event. I've got some friends going there this year. I was tempted to go there as well, but decided not to. But I I mean I might regret it honestly. It's amazing it's amazing place to be there for the draft. I think it's going to be a unique experience, and yeah, I can't wait to hear about the feedback of my friends and just in general how it went.
So for the second time in 2 years, Jeremy, I think as we get into our draft lists, we're gonna at least have one in common here off the top. It's the San Jose Sharks, and I'll let you take the lead on what you want to say about Macklin Celebrini.
Yeah, certainly. If I'd be the Sharks, I would draft Macklin Celebrini. Um, I think they've even announced it. They made some sneak peek on some tweets here and there. Like I think I can't remember exactly what they said, but they said like celebrate and the word celebrate, the first five letters they put it in capital letters, um, or six letters, whatever. Um, but yeah, it's he's not as like he's not generational. I wouldn't say he's as good as Bedard and the Matthews, McDavid, McKinnon, first overall picks we've had in the last 10 years. But he's very good. He's very good. There's no really weakness. He's got a tremendous shot. All season long, he's picked the goaltenders of the NCAA, which are adults, right? With his shot from anywhere on the ice, pretty much left side, right side, closer than net, tips. Yeah, there's no weakness about him. Playmaking is also such a strength. Um, he's an amazing skater. Maybe not like obviously I think he's even still maybe 17. I don't know if it's still the case. He's very young. He's very young. Obviously for an NCAA player, he started the season being 17, so that's like as young as you can be in the NCAA. So it's obviously his physical frame is maybe not fully developed, but yeah, the defensive game is amazing. He's always there to support support defensively, kill the rush, help the transition game. He's very he has a very good attention for details, little one touch passes or the way he times his plays, everything. There's no weakness with him. He's amazing, and I think the Sharks are gonna be very happy to select him at first overall. I don't see a world where another Shane Wright incident happens. Although it was very fun, as I said, I was there for that draft, so it was very fun. But it's not gonna happen this year. He's gonna go first overall.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's a no-brainer. And yeah, 17, he's still 17 years old, 32 goals and 64 points in 38 games with Boston University. And it's almost like I don't think he's the best defensive forward of the draft, but he's almost the best at everything else he could possibly be to me. Like his shot, like you said, his shot is incredible. He's an excellent two-way forward. He's phenomenal in transition, which is something that I think teams, you watch the way these playoffs went. So much of the offensive zone possession was contained to the outsides. You have so many shots getting blocked. The only ways that teams are reliably scoring is cycling the play and then crashing the net or scoring in transition. And I think these transitional forwards are going to be more and more valuable. I have Berkeley Catton as another one high on my list, and nobody holds a candle to Macklin Celebrini when he gets the puck anywhere on the ice. That there's danger that within within 2 plays or 10 seconds it could be in the back of your net, and that's even if he gets it in his own zone, standing still, right? Like it's I thought he was the best player for Canada at the World Juniors, and yeah, San Jose's getting a franchise player. You're right that he's not quite McKinnon or McDavid, Matthews, Bedard, but he's coming out in front of that next category. And Jeremy, what I was going to ask you, Macklin Celebrini with this season, where does he go last year in the Bedard, Carlson, Fantilli, Will Smith top four?
That's a great question. You just mentioned how well he performed at the World Championship of under 20s. I think it plays a massive part on how NHL teams view him as a prospect. Obviously, the if he played last year, he would have been with Bedard, so he would not have been the best player. But in order to be the best player in a U20 squad of Canada, you need to be an amazing player, and he was that this year. So there was so much exposure on him this year, not as much as Bedard, but there's still like everybody just said, okay, this guy's amazing. He carried Canada, therefore he's the lock at first overall. It's hard to say, but if we only think about what he did in the NCAA, it's really hard. I think he would go in above Will Smith. That's 100%. There's no doubt in my mind. Now it's between Fantilli and Carlson. Both are different players, and they're very different than Celebrini. Carlson is a very meticulous playmaker with pretty big size and just a very smooth skater. Maybe not the fastest, but very smooth. Um, with a huge physical um upside, right? He's big, he's huge. Same thing for Fantilli. He's immense. He's in my opinion a faster skater than Carlson. Has amazing hands, amazing goal scoring touch. Celebrini is maybe not as like physically impulsive as this guy, as those two. So I could see NHL teams just saying, look at Fantilli, look at Carlson. They're just ready for the NHL next season. While Celebrini is probably ready as well, but just because he's maybe a little like not as big as those two other guys, I think he could be picked at 4. There's no way he's gonna go above a Bedard. So I would say between 2 to 4. I'll just in order to give a clear number, I'd say 4 for the Sharks. Why not? They picked 4 last year. They're gonna pick first this year. It's gonna go to the Sharks anyways.
Second overall, I'll let you take lead on this one as well.
Right. Well, for me, funny enough, Demidov was a guy I was heavily debating, and I'm honestly still a little bit debating on putting first overall. I never did it, but I never completely disregarded the possibility for me. He's amazing. There's a lot of things that he does that are better than Celebrini. There's no doubt in my mind for that. Uh, I started really watching the prospects early this year. As soon as like August, the second they started playing. Obviously, Demidov over in Russia, he starts playing earlier than Celebrini. The NCAA season starts in like October, pretty late. Even after the CHL. So I watched Demidov a lot and got on the hype train very early. Um, and in the preseason, I think he even got into 2 KHL matches in the end of last year. I'm not sure, but it was either end of last year or preseason this year. And I mean, he was dominating. He played with Mishkov, and that was the most ridiculous game I've ever seen. Um, and I was watching him. I was watching Mishkov. Mishkov is obviously a little older, but at times Demidov was looking like, in terms of being an NHL superstar, was looking like the better of the two. Um, it's a big thing to say, but there's so many things that he said that he does that are just world class. His hands, the ability to manipulate, get through stakes, get through pressure. Um, it's amazing. He controls the play in a very calm way. There's a lot of comparisons with him with Kaprizov because of the way he uses his edges and the way he's like laterally mobile. But with the puck, it reminds me a lot of Kucherov, the way he slows the play down and just simply has amazing hands. When Kucherov has the puck on the power play for Tampa Bay, um, it seems like even if there's a guy just skating at him as fast as he can, he's never panicking, and he knows his next play. He knows where the best pass available is. He knows how to juke him out, how to activate at the last second, changes of speed, and Demidov's got it all figured out as well at the age of 17, 18. Uh, Obviously, it really sucks that he couldn't play in the KHL. Well, it's not that he couldn't, but he had no opportunity. It made no sense for him to go because his team is not a team that likes that they're here to compete, and they are kind of reluctant to giving ice time to young players. So he played in the MHL and absolutely like dominated. I don't know if you have the stats pulled up. I think it's like 60 points in 30 games, something like that.
Yeah,
It's
that's
ridiculous.
yeah,
That's it.
exactly that. Yeah, 60 and 30 in the MHL.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, there's no reason for him to be in that league. I think if he played in the NCAA, honestly, that's what I think. If he played in the NCAA this year for like I'll just say like a random team like Ohio or whatever, or I think he would have there's a chance he would have been in the conversation for first overall more than that. Just because he's Russian and there's a lot of uncertainty in that. As a player, I think Celebrini's floor is much higher. There's just no way he doesn't become a first line center in my books, unless he plays behind McDavid or somebody like that. But I don't see that happening with the Sharks unless Will Smith becomes the best player in the league. I don't see that happening. Um, so I think Celebrini's a lock at being like a first line center. Demidov, um, I mean, to me, he's a lock as well at becoming a star, almost. But there's just we haven't seen him play against adults yet, barely. Although he did look amazing. There's this stuff of uncertainty. It's just the fact that he hasn't played against adults. He hasn't played internationally. He hasn't played. He hasn't talked to that many teams. Although this year, no, this week he went to Florida to talk to some teams. But the Russian factor is a real thing. And yeah, it's a little riskier pick. So to me, I'd take him at 2. But yeah, if I were Chicago, I'd jump on that. I know there's some talks about him about Chicago picking Levshunov. I would definitely not do that. Levshunov is a great player. We're gonna get into him very soon. But my Demidov is just with Bedard, it would be silly. It would be literally Crosby Malkin level to me of a duo. I would definitely do that if I were Chicago.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a no-brainer, almost completely a no-brainer. Probably the most dynamic player in the draft that I've seen. And you talked about Macklin Celebrini's floor being higher. I agree with that 1,000%. Ivan Demidov's ceiling, I think, is higher than Macklin Celebrini's. Like,
I agree.
yeah, the 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 hockey IQ, the passing, and the puck handling is all as good as it possibly could be. That's what I've seen out of this kid. The only note I've had on him all season, the only knock I've had on him has been him overhandling the puck. But that kind of does come with playing in a league you shouldn't be playing in. That comes with being the best player in the league far and away. Um, it, to me, yeah, Chicago already with a solid group of young defensemen can add a second superstar to already a superstar forward. And yeah, I've talked a lot about how I think the Chicago Blackhawks have done just a wonderful job of turning around an aging, far from competitive core to a team that looks like they're going to compete sooner than later. And Demidov almost feels like the cherry on top, but that's almost a disservice to him because you wouldn't call somebody this good. You don't want to take anything away from him. He's going to be a very important player for this team.
I agree.
Moving on to number 3. Aiden, let's switch it up here. Let's start you off at number 3. What do you have Anaheim taking?
Well, I have the guy that Jeremy just talked about with Chicago. I have heard Artem Levshinov to the Chicago Blackhawks is a very real possibility at second overall. But to me, the Anaheim Ducks have to jump on this guy at 3. They've got defensemen in the system. They've got Olin Zellweger, who looks like he's progressing well. They've got Pavel Mintyukov, who looked very good in his rookie year last year. But those are both offensive left side defensemen. You have the opportunity to put this brutal play killing physical shutdown defenseman in Artem Levshinov on that right side for a long time. He is probably one of the best play killers I've seen in the NCAA for a draft eligible player. Like that, we have three of them. Zeev Boyum, Artem Levshinov, and Macklin Celebrini, who all played their draft year in college. And if you catch this guy on the right night, you might think he's the best defensive prospect in a decade. It's he can be a little bit inconsistent, but you watch the right game and he dominates. He steps on opponents, and that's how easy it is for him to get the puck off somebody, push them away, and just turn it back the other way. He's not going to do as much for you offensively as a Zane Perek or like I said, a Zeev Boyum, but I don't think there's any doubt that, for me, his floor is a number 2 defenseman. Like, pretty simply, he's going to be a top 4 defenseman no matter what. Well, what do you have at 3 for the Anaheim Ducks, Jeremy?
If I were the Ducks, I would not pick my number 3rd ranked player because I'll get into it later. I'll pick my 4th ranked player, which is Berkeley Catton. Like you said, there's so many amazing offensive leaning defensemen in Zellweger, Minchukov in the organization. One of the two is for sure going to be a star. I'd go for a forward. Recently they picked McTavish, who's not at all like Catton, but who's turned out well. I think they could use some finesse, some type of player like Catton is, a very dynamic, very highly skilled with his hands, with his mobility, honestly with his shot. How many goals did he score this year? Like 40, 50, some crazy stuff. I think he scored 50 goals.
54, yeah.
That's crazy because he's not even a goal scorer. And he still got 54 goals. The way he picked apart the WHL this year, it's historic. It's at historic pace. Um, the only knock I have on him that some people don't have, I've talked to a lot of people about Cadden, and a lot of people seem to think his skating is very good. Obviously, elite prospects have his skating as one of the best in the draft, like top 3. I think he's very mobile. I think he's very agile. He can like bounce off pressure very well, skate through tight areas around the boards, around defensemen very well, but I don't think he has separation speed yet. I think his stride is maybe not perfect yet, which I think if he was a very good skater, I'd have him in the Celebrini Demidov conversation. Like I'm talking about perfect skating, obviously, but yeah, he's still a very good skater. It's not a big knock on his game. Obviously, he's also on the smaller side. That's another knock that a lot of people have. I'm not worried about it personally. I would have liked to see a little more grit, a little more uh sort of tendency to go in the middle and go in high danger areas, be not too scared of physical contact. I'd say he's maybe slightly scared of it. Not too much. He's amazing. He off puck, he's always looking to do something, force defenseman to make a mistake. Very supportive player. His motor is very great. Always skating around, always looking to create, always looking to have the puck. Amazing hands. Amazing vision in the game. Offensively, there's not many players every year that you have the chance of adding on your squad that offers so much. I think Anaheim should look into picking a guy like that. If he's well rounded, if he has two solid other line mates in the NHL, he could be a 90 points guy easily. He's that good offensively.
One thing to add as well, just thanks to my proximity and then familiarity subsequently with the WHL, that Spokane Chiefs team was not very good this year. So you have every single game going in against the Spokane team. The other team is saying, okay, we just got to shut down Catton. Like, he was their best player far and away. he is the focal point of every team's defenses, and it's who they're matching up against. There's nobody else on that team that anybody's really worried about. And he still had 54 goals and 116 points, which is all the more impressive when he's playing with those guys. I totally love this guy. Um, I think it's exactly what you said. It's the lack of that extra gear of skating. If he had that extra gear, or if he was 6'1", I'd put all the money in the world he's going to be a top 5 pick. But I think those two things are going to be what drops him down a little bit. Going on to 4, Columbus. Jeremy has had a lot of high draft picks. They've gone different directions with all of them. They don't know they don't know what they have in a lot of different guys. Who are they going to add to that mix at 4?
I'm between two players. I think in real life, if Lindstrom's there, they're gonna jump on it. I would definitely consider it, but he's not my number third ranked guy. He's very close, but he's not there. I think I would lean towards my number third ranked guy, who is Steve William. Not a lot of people have him that high, but I do. The way he played this year in the NCAA is at a historic pace. He scored 50, if I remember correctly, 50 points in like 42 games. It's unprecedented for a defenseman in the NCAA at that young age. He's not that young. He's born in December, but still he's what, 18 almost all season long. What he was able to do this year for Denver, pushing his team very far in the frozen no, sorry, the NCAA championship tournament, and just all season long dominating against uh the NCAA competition. The way he's able to play at the blue line, the Makar, everybody just compares every mobile defenseman to Makar these days, but the way he's like able to move Quinn Hughes, Makar, and name any modern offensive defenseman, Z Williams just looks like all of them. Amazing with his feet and hands, super deceptive. Uh, the way he just plays on 5, able to that's one thing I really like to watch with offensive defensemen is the way they play on 5, right? Because once you're on the power play playing on the at the point, a lot of defensemen can do it. It's not it's not as hard as playing 5 and consistently resisting to putting pressure on the other team, being able to keep the puck offensively and being able to create while there's 5 other opponents on the ice. Bouillon has been, in my opinion, uh, the best defenseman in this year's draft at doing so. Uh, the Again, like the combination of hands and feet, the way he's able to beat pretty much every forechecker that's going up against him. So good at joining the rush too, although he doesn't do it too much. Some other defensemen do it more often, but yeah, he's not that big as well for a defenseman. I think he's almost is. Do you have his size? I think he's almost 6 foot, or is he 6 foot?
Yeah, I think I have him listed here at 6 feet tall.
Exactly. At 6 foot tall, 6 feet tall. Sorry, he's able to play around the boards as well, amazingly well. He's able to defend the rush. A lot of people think like, oh, he's offensive leaning, slightly undersized for a defenseman. Um, he's not going to defend well. I disagree. His defensive stick is amazing. He's able to also corral the puck behind his net and sort of prepare the transition game super quickly. Um, to me, he's just, yeah, he's the best defenseman that's available this year. Columbus has Juracek, who's kind of had some trouble with his development. I wouldn't be stressed at all because Juracek is awesome, but he's kind of like had some trouble with really consistently staying at the NHL level, while Simon Nemec has been able to do so this year for a better team. Um, he's kind of had some problem with his coach, although it's not the same coach anymore. I think he got fired not too long ago. But yeah, also there's um, Denton Mateychuk, who there was a lot of debate with him and Minchukov in the draft year. I think Minchukov's kind of solidified the debate as him being the better player as of right now. Obviously, they're both very young. We can't tell for sure now, but I think I wouldn't say it's a bad idea to add Ziv William to that defensive squad. There's just a lot of uncertainty with prospects. You never really know what's going to happen to them until many, many years after. Steve Williams is amazing. Obviously, you're probably going to pick Lindstrom, or at least going to consider him. I consider him too as well. It's a very close decision, but William is just amazing. I'm going to go for him if I were Columbus.
Yeah, Stanislav Svozil as well on that defense core gives Columbus to me three rocks and three guys that I have some faith in, especially Juracek and Matejchuk. I think they have two top four defensemen without a doubt there. So I am going to go Caden Lindstrom. Again, if anybody listening has listened to this podcast all year, I watched this guy play in October and I just fell in love with him. Like he's the real deal when it comes to being a power forward. He The first thing I thought was a better version of Quinton Byfield when I saw this guy play at first. His skating is excellent for somebody who is 6'4", 6'5". His shooting is great. His hockey sense and his passing is very, very good. Um, what I love about this guy is his ceiling is a first line center power forward, like you said, like an Evgeny Malkin. But his floor is still to me a top six centerman because he's responsible everywhere. He's physical everywhere. He doesn't take shifts off. He doesn't take games off. His motor's always going. And again, we talk about transition forwards. Macklin Celebrini and Berkeley Catton are both great transition forwards. I don't think Caden Lindstrom's as good as them, but he is very, very good in that part of the game. He will always be able to take the puck from defense to offense in the snap of a finger. It's there one time and then it's gone. He got hurt, and that's going to be the thing that drags him down draft boards, if anything. But to me, you talk about Demidov and Bedard potentially setting up like a Crosby and Malkin kind of situation. Caden Lindstrom and Adam Fantilli is a dream top two centers moving forward. And I don't know exactly what Cole Sillinger and Kent Johnson are going to be for this Blue Jackets team. So I think that further emphasizes the need to bring another surefire forward into this mix.
Well, as expected, these lists are completely different, and that just speaks to what we were saying about how this draft from 2 or 3 till about 11 is going to be all over the place. Like that's my favorite part about this, how unpredictable it is. And Jeremy, I'm looking forward to you continuing it when you let us know who you have Montreal taking that at 5.
Right. Well, for the last two picks, I went with guys who are probably not going to be picked in the top five in real life in William and Catton, or Catton William, sorry. If I were Montreal on my list, I'd just jump on Lindstrom if he's there at 5. Obviously, there's a chance that Demidov falls. If he does, I would go for him. But otherwise, I mean, Lindstrom is an amazing player to add to that squad. He's stylistically, he's not too different to Slavkovsky, who I had a lot lower than most. I didn't have him in the top 3 in 2022. Looking back at it, I probably should have had him closer to the top 3. I've learned a lot on how guys like him play, how to view them, and Lindstrom. Um, in the first 1 or 2 viewings I've had of him early in the year, I didn't like him as much. I thought honestly Basha looked maybe a little better, but as the year went on, he's just continued to prove me wrong. He's everything you want in a sort of modern power forward as well. One thing I've noticed a lot on him, to add on to what you've said when you picked him earlier, um, his off puck game, the way he puts pressure on defenders and just in general, his forechecking is really good. He's with his reach, he's very good at creating turnovers. Very good at putting on pressure, getting scoring chances. I love the way when the opposing team sort of plays behind the net, he's able to, with his body and with his stick, uh, for like create turnovers and then quickly pass the puck in front of the net to find Basha or another one of his teammate and create a scoring chance. He's done it all year long, and I've really liked this version of him. He moves super well. He's got crazy good hands, able to deke out any defenseman in the WHL this year. And yeah, there's so much upside with him, and there's a certain high floor. There's many. That's one thing I look at as well with prospects, especially later in the draft. But why not still in the top 5? how many roles they can fit in the NHL. Lindstrom could fit any role. He could fit the first, second, or third line role if needed. So there's no chance he's gonna fail unless one thing you've talked about, injuries. Um, it's been sort of a speculation. I think it's been confirmed. He's had a herniated disc, which is a pretty unfortunate injury to have at that young age. Maybe teams will be scared of it. Maybe not. I'm not an expert in that. So there's some uncertainty that has happened with him. But in terms of like how he plays on the ice, he's a super high floor, super high ceiling, very interesting guy, built for the NHL. And yeah, if I were Montreal at 5 overall, why not add another guy that plays like a bit like Slavkovsky, although they're pretty different players in many ways. Why not add another big guy? This would look great for them as a 1-2 punch and to their top two lines. I'd definitely go for Lindstrom at 5.
To me, Montreal need to take a forward at 5. I've seen a lot of discourse about how it might be Zeev Boyum. That makes little to no sense to me unless they truly believe he's far and away going to be the best player available at 5th. Because I'm very high on that Montreal Canadiens defense core. I think you have slam dunks in Caden Gooley and Lane Hudson and David Reinbacher, and then you've got your maybe nots. But when you have 3 slam dunks, being able to roll the dice on, well, will a Justin Barron hit? Will a Logan Mailloux hit? Well, when you have the guys they already have, then you're not relying on it. So I don't see a need to use this pick on another defenseman. I was so back and forth on this one though, because I see a lot of the brilliance to the game of Berkeley Catton that you do, Jeremy. And so this pick to me was Catton for a long time, but near the end of the season, Ty Ginla passed him. And I think Montreal is going to go with a Ginla at 5 because you look at that group: Suzuki, Caulfield, Slaykovsky. Slaykovsky's a big guy, but I I think they need to inject this tenacious forward into that group, and this guy where it doesn't matter where he's going to play. It doesn't matter who he's going to play against. He is going to be a pain to play against because every time he gets the puck, it's so hard to knock him off it. That's probably my favorite part of his game is the fact that he's only 6 feet tall, but you don't know how to defend him in any one play because sometimes he's going to beat you with his hands. Sometimes he's going to beat you with his power and his strength to get to the high danger scoring chances. And sometimes he's going to step in over the blue line, hold on a sec, and then fire a cannon of a shot towards the net. This guy's shooting ability is awesome as well. He's one of the best offensive forwards that I've seen. And I totally didn't buy into this guy until late in the season, but um, he's he's first in everything too, and that's what I love. Is there a race for the puck? Well, he's either getting there first or he's going to get the body positions to get that puck. And for a Montreal Canadiens team that have Suzuki and Caulfield and Slaykovsky in that forward group already, to me, Iginla brings something they don't have. And as much as I like everybody else in the in hockey think it'd be very cool if he goes to Calgary, I don't see it happening. I think Montreal's going to snap him up at 5.
All right, moving on to number 6. Jeremy, who do you have Utah selecting?
I think it's even pretty realistic given the size. Obviously, we know Utah/Arizona loves to draft their big guys. This might sound a little bit of a surprise, although there's been some hype on him as of late. I'd go for Beckett Seneke. I think he's well, funny enough, all year long I've had him in my top 10. Back in November I had him at 8, which is gonna come to a surprise for a lot of people. A lot of people didn't really like him that much and really started picking up on him in the last 2 months. Um, you can just see it. You know, everybody talks about his growth spurt. You can just see it. It's obvious when he's on the ice. Especially in like earlier this year, his skating was like a little clunky and not super smooth. But it didn't bother him at all. He was still able. That's what I really picked up on him really early in the year. Every single play that he makes, in my first 3 viewings, it all worked out. Every single pass that he had intended to make in mind, every single little puck touch between the legs of a defenseman, or just change of decision, everything turned out well. His understanding of details, his understanding of how the game works, what his next move should be, um, how to play against pressure, how to create better chances, how to maximize the way his team, his team can put on pressure. It's all great in all three zones. I think the play is there. Only slight knock I have on him is maybe the off puck game isn't always that great, and the skating came a long way this year, but it's still not perfect. But um, yeah, I mean, you can see in the playoffs and in the towards the end of the year, the way he performed, he was far and away the best player on this team, for the Generals. It was just amazing watching him on the ice. Um, every play, everything, all the action, on the ice flew through him. Um, again, in all three zones, he was starting the rush. He was on the power play. It was silly how he was dominating with his shot, with his passes, with his size and reach, being able to go around guys, close the gap, um, sort of put every forechecker around the middle to then let his defenseman do all the work. Um, he's such a dangerous player. I think he's overall pretty misunderstood by a lot of people. Kind of like Nate Danielson was for a lot of people, in my opinion, last year. He's developed so well this year, by the way. They're completely different players, obviously, but Seneki, I think he's built for the NHL. There's no doubt in my mind. If I were Utah, I'd happily pick him at 6. He's gonna develop so well into a lock for a top 6 player, and he's got great upside, in my opinion. I'd absolutely pick him at 6.
Seneki was a rocket up the charts too. Like you said it. If you had him in your top 10 at the beginning of the year, I gotta commend your foresight because not a lot of people did. This was a guy that broke out late in the draft. And yeah, it seems to me, Jeremy, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I usually don't like it when people go down the route of, well, oh, this is the best blank that we've ever had, right? Every time there's an Olympics, every time there's a exciting Stanley Cup final, exciting Stanley Cup series, it's like, oh, was that the best ever? Is this the biggest game? Like, no, it's not. But it does seem to me that this is one of the most skilled drafts we've seen in terms of every single player in this top 5 that we've talked about so far. You can make the case and say, like, their puck handling ability and the puck handling ability of the players at the top of this draft is unbelievable to me, and he's just another one that falls into that category. um let's go to my number 6. This was a very hard decision between my 6 and my 7. They're two defensemen, and for Utah, I think they're going to take Sam Dickinson because much like Caden Lindstrom, and much like Dmitry Simashev last year, players that are this big don't skate like this. And Sam Dickinson's four-way mobility, like, for a 6'3" player, he's phenomenal. But for any player, you can make the case that he's one of the most agile and explosive skaters of any defenseman in this draft. And I have him ahead of Zeev Boyum and Zane Perek because, to me, the toolbox there, the hockey sense and the passing and the puck handling, I think is going to come for Sam Dickinson. But I think the physicality, the shooting, and the skating are 3 things that are hard to teach a defenseman to excel at the NHL level. And I think he's checked all those boxes, whereas some of the other ones are more project. And I think for Utah, who obviously moving to a new city, they're gonna want to start to compete soon. I think Sam Dickinson is a much more NHL ready player than some of the other guys that are going to go below him. Um, and as far as positional needs go for Arizona, you are getting another left shot defenseman. Um, but to me, I don't think they need another forward. You've got Logan Cooley and Josh Doan and Dylan Gunther, Matthias Mitchell. You've got a group of very good young forwards there. And I think the defense, aside from Simashev, is pretty bare bones. So you get a number 2 to staple to that side right beside Dmitry Simashev on that left defense side for them. And If they handle those players well, if they handle their development well, that could be the building blocks of a competitive Utah hockey club here. What do you think of Dickinson, Jeremy?
Well, we can skip to pick 7 because that's where I have him.
Okay,
Who
perfect.
drops at 7?
Ottawa does.
Yeah, sure. I'll take Dickinson with Ottawa. Like you said, he's such a good skater for his size. He's huge. He's got a very heavy shot. That's one thing I've noticed on him. The way he plays to the blue line, he loves to shoot, and it's heavy, it's powerful. It goes through everybody. It goes through the net. Um, his slap shot is amazing also. Not a lot of people have a well-developed slap shot at that age. I think he does for defenseman. He's he reminds me of the way he it's far from a perfect comparison, but the way he plays a little bit of being a great mobile two-way defenseman. Victor Hedman, he's just like him. He's big, not only in terms of like height, but also size. Dickinson he's strong. He's a very strong player, strong on his skates, hard to move him back. If you're a smaller size forward and you're skating up the ice, and you're looking up and you're in one-on-one against Sam Dickinson, it's not gonna be fun. He's gonna close every single opportunity you have of going around him with his huge stick. Because he's like what 6'3", 6'4". He's pretty big. Do you have his measurements?
Yeah, 6'3" as measured right now, but I have to say, in what I've watched in the Memorial Cup, I mean, the guy looks like a large grown man. All you need to
Yeah,
add is some facial hair, and he looks like Aaron Ekblad did when he hopped into the NHL.
Yeah,
pretty
he's
much.
6'3", 194, I think. Like he's built. He's ready.
Last
Yeah,
win has him at 203.
Yeah.
there you go. He's the way he moves at let's say he's 200, just to round this up, the way he moves at 200 is unprecedented almost in this year's draft. There's maybe another defenseman that's also very big and moves well that we're gonna get into soon. But yeah, there's so many things to like. He's a very toolsy guy. The way he sometimes gets the puck behind his net and decides to just go for a skate, deke out every forechecker like it was like he didn't even notice they were on the ice, and enter the blue zone, make a nice pass, get a nice rush chance. He's so mobile. He's so great at initiating the every chance his team gets in transition. He's great in front of the net, get like keeping his goaltender out of trouble for rebounds and deflections and everything. Great quarterback power play. Um, Obviously he's not as well. There's a lot of stuff that with him that are maybe a little scary. The way he turns the puck pretty often this year, and the way he sometimes kind of like David Reinbacher last year. There's a lot of it feels like he's being told not to do everything on the ice. Let his forwards do more. I remember Reinbacher would always on the power play get the puck behind the net. um, Reinbacher is also a huge defenseman. He'd get the puck behind the net, get so much speed, look like a very dangerous like puck carrier, and as he was entering, like crossing the red line, almost entering the blue line, he'd stop and pass the puck behind like he was told not to be the offensive guy. Dickinson also seems like maybe he's told or maybe he doesn't quite know yet. He hasn't been coached this way, but I think the team that drafts him, we haven't who picks at 7? I don't think we said it. Ottawa, right? We did say it. Sorry. If Ottawa has like, if they really take the time with him to sort of tell him like you can do whatever you want, like have fun out there, start learning what I'd stick him in the AHL as soon as possible. I know it's difficult with the CHL agreements, um, but I wouldn't jump him in the NHL right away. I'd stick him in the AHL when he'd be 20, just learning on how to develop just his sort of offensive game in a way that's going to be not restricted because he's got all the tools. He's got great reach, great hands, great skating, great size. There's everything going for him. Great shot. Just needs to put it up more consistently and be a little more careful with turnovers. And I think you've got an amazing player in Dickinson for Ottawa, like you said. and there's some certainty with him. I think if worst case scenario, he's going to become a second pair defenseman. And Ottawa, there's obviously a lot of backlash they've had with Tyler Boucher, who's not even going to be an NHLer most likely. Um, if Dickinson doesn't reach his potential, he's at least going to be part of the team. I think it's a pretty good pick for them. I'd go for it.
A safe bet is often a good bet, but on Aiden and I's list at number 7, we have Zane Parekh, and some people might say he's a safe bet. I think he probably is, but he's probably one of my favorite players in this draft, and that's why I kind of had to take it away on this one because in watching those Memorial Cup games, this guy instantly grabs your attention with and without the puck. I think maybe, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but maybe not the highest floor. I think this guy is not necessarily boomer bust, but the floor isn't a top 4D. The floor is definitely not a top pair guy, but the ceiling, oh man, the ceiling is just disgusting. The ceiling is the sky on this one. I mean, over the course of his draft eligible season in Saginaw, the guy put up 96 points in 66 games. And a lot of the time, with a draft eligible guy like that, you might wonder, is he a liability in his own zone? Some might say yes. I certainly don't think so. I like the way he defends. He defends in such a tactical way. Like, to me, his hockey sense is off the charts, completely off the charts. Um, I I just have this weird feeling that he's going to end up probably being the third player in this draft when we look 10 years down the road. That's my thought. I mean, it's a bold prediction, but I'm just a huge fan here. Maybe that adds a little bit of bias. And do you want to add a little bit of insight on why you put him at 7 and why you had Ottawa selecting him?
Yeah, I kind of think back to the 2020 NHL draft, and I think that um I'm gonna try and make an analogy here, and it might come off a little bit silly, but picking Jake Sanderson over Jamie Drysdale in 2020 was almost like Ottawa eating their vegetables, and Zane Parekh is the dessert that's going to come after it. Because if they had taken Drysdale instead of Sanderson, there's no way they take Parekh with this pick. But because they have a guy like Jake Sanderson on that left side, where you know that you're going to get a reliable two-way defenseman for years to come, they've got him locked down. They know what he is. He's a good top pair defenseman for them right now. And being able to bring the right shot, Zane Parekh, into that group, it brings something that they haven't had before, and I don't think comes around very often, which is a truly brilliant offensive defenseman. Like his, you called it, the hockey sense is amazing. His passing as well is so good. His passing is crisp. It's on point. It's never off target, and his four-way mobility too. The way he can kind of move everywhere, and Jeremy said it earlier. Everybody's compared to Cale Makar now when you're an offensive defenseman. That's just how it goes. But truly, the way he walks the blue line and the way he creates space in the offensive zone is brilliant. James, you said it yourself. I really like his game in his own zone too. Specifically, one thing that I need him to improve upon is, I'll say, transition defending. When he's got a guy coming at him and when he's got players that are developing chances off the rush against him, I find he will plant his feet and then go at him. Like he likes to kind of lunge at players and get a little bit out of position to throw the hit. I think that kind of just has to be tweaked a little bit, but once that is, then we've got this brilliant offensive defenseman who is far from a defensive liability to me, and that checks the boxes that you want. And I think this is a dream for Ottawa to get him at 7. I think they're thrilled.
Well, moving on to pick 8, Jeremy. What do you have Seattle taking? Which I think this is a crucial draft for them to add an impact player.
Right. At 8, the best player available on my list makes sense. It would be TJ Ginla. We've talked about him earlier. I think he's, in terms of like having that dog in him, there's nobody in the draft that's well, maybe some player in the draft, but he's up there. Uh, the way it seems like his dad is just in his ear every single time before every single shift. He's just in his ear saying like, you're gonna make the NHL if you, and you're not gonna make the NHL if you don't give your best on this exact shift. Um, he's one of the most consistent player on the ice, always just putting pressure on every single player in his like around him when he doesn't have the puck. Always supporting his teammates along the boards, low on the ice. I think his skating came a long way this year. I don't think he was that great of a well, he had some north-south speed, but it wasn't stable. It wasn't he wasn't able to react super quickly with his feet. I think it's come a long way. He's really transformed into a nice with the puck, nice puck carrier, nice transition sort of main player. He's able to enter the O zone very efficiently, able to react to incoming pressure very well. He's got a nasty shot, like we said before. It just seems like also I've talked about Lindstrom this way. There's a lot of different outcomes that could happen with him. Same for Iginla. He could be a first, second, third line player. It doesn't matter. Every single if it feels like no matter which team drafts him, no matter which role he's gonna play, no matter with which teammate he's gonna have, he's gonna be him. He's gonna be the same exact player we see in the WHL, except a better version because he's gonna be older. But when you pick Iginla, you pick a certain type of player that usually doesn't really fail you, that doesn't really let you down. I think again that's going to be an amazing pick for Seattle, sort of building towards um a nice offensive core with the lights of Beniers and just everybody they have over there. Um, I'd be very happy with picking Iginla at 8 with Seattle. I think it's heartbroken. Obviously, if you're just an NHL fan overall that wants to see Iginla go to the Flames at 9, but yeah, Seattle, if they want to play the villain, if Iginla's there at 8, I'd pick him for sure.
I'm a huge best player available person. I just kind of know that uh, teams are gonna pick for position, especially in this kind of draft where you see, like we said, that there's tiers of players where everybody's sort of interchangeable in their own ways. And Jeremy, you had him higher than I did. You had him up at 4, but I'm finally gonna get around to knocking Zeev Boyum off my board. For me, the Seattle Kraken, I like that forward group they've put together in terms of the young players. Um, they've rolled the dice on 3 of them. Jagger Furcus, Edward Shala, and Carson Rakoff for me are all kind of boomer bust players. But you have hopefully 1 or 2 of those guys that are going to break through realistically with Shane Wright and with Matty Beniers. And I think you want to add your number 1 defenseman to that, and that's Bouillon. Everything you said about him rings true. He's very, very competent in his own zone. He's amazing in transition. This guy is the way I think about Berkeley Catton in transition in terms of forwards. I kind of think of Zeev Boyum as his parallel when it comes to defensemen. His passing is excellent, his hockey sense is excellent, and his ability to pick the puck up anywhere and get that controlled exit into the neutral zone, the successful transition, and then do something with the puck offensively. And then, like you said, his mobility is very good. The Kale McCarr comparisons are always going to come when it comes to the offensive defenseman, but when it comes to the high end ones, he's very complete. Both sides of his game are good, and what's good is I look at him this year and I think this screams this screams to me a player who is just going to grow from here. Like I totally think Seattle would be silly if he's on the board not to take him. Like he's going to be their number 1 guy for a long time.
I agree for sure. Also I forgot to mention Shane Wright in the mix. I think Shane Wright is a very underrated player by most. Everybody just says like he just goes off the radar, right? He was picked at 4, he fell off the draft. We don't know why. Some people say he's got bad attitude or whatever. But if you go back in the World Juniors of 2022, you look at the interviews that Bar Down did, the guys with like Corwin and whatever, the whole Bar Down crew. They interviewed the players like they do every year. They asked um many personalities questions, which I really sort of analyze most of the time. I think it's very interesting. Um, they often ask who's like the most responsible player, who's the best leader, and everything. Everybody said Shane Wright. Everybody said Shane Wright was the best leader, the most responsible guy, the most humble guy, whatever. Um, Obviously, what he did when he wasn't drafted, like the look he gave to the Montreal Canadiens was talked about a lot and everything. But I mean, we don't know. Maybe he does have an attitude problem that his teammates didn't pick up on and that NHL teams saw. But maybe he doesn't. We don't know what happened with him. But the way he played this year, the way he continues to develop, I think he's going to be an amazing second line center behind Matty Beniers. When you look back at it, probably Logan Cooley or Yuroshkovsky are going to be the two best players to come out of this draft so far. We don't know exactly. Obviously, it's very early. Maybe it's going to be late Hudson. We don't know, but Cooley and Slav have developed so well. Um, Shane Wright, I think I gotta give him a little bit of a spotlight. He's also developed well, went under the radar. So yeah, you got a good offensive crew there for Seattle. Just wanted to shout that out.
Yeah, well, I completely agree with you. And I mean, Jeremy, like let's watch these playoffs. Watch how Alexi Lafreniere played in these playoffs. That was a first overall pick from 2020 that a lot of people labeled a bust. And I think everybody there's two major things here at play. Number one, um, these are kids. Kids develop at their own pace. Somebody not being a star in the NHL within 3 years of being drafted does not mean they're a bust. Number two, this we're still in this group of players that all had a major development year ripped away thanks to COVID. The 2020-2021 season was unprecedented and bizarre for analyzing prospects. And you saw it happen in the 2022 draft class too, where guys that looked like they were on specific development trajectories just fell off them or it changed or whatever, right? And so you're going to see guys from those 2020, 21, 22, 23 drafts that are just going to develop at a different pace than what you'd expect. And I think Shane Wright's one of them for sure. And yeah, the Seattle Kraken, anybody they pick at 8 this year, so long as it's so long as it's one of these players that we were so high on, like I truly think they're going to be adding a major piece to this team. Number 9 is the Calgary Flames, and yeah, I think you, me, and everybody in the hockey world would think that being able to pick a Ginla here would be perfect for them. I just don't, I don't see him still being there. But speaking of guys that you were very high on, this is where I finally have Berkeley Catton going off my board. Yeah, you said everything there is to say about him, and I did add a little bit of context when you were talking, and I'll reiterate it again that to me the transition game offensively is just going to keep getting more and more important in the NHL as teams start to analyze offensive zone patterns and you see the collapsing defense really start to yet again be prevalent, right? We saw the Nashville Predators in the playoffs just again, like I'm a Canucks fan, so I watched the playoffs. I watched Nashville just completely suffocate Vancouver in their own zone, and the best time for the Canucks to get something off was either on the forecheck when they force a turnover or in transition. And I think as the transitional scoring continues to go up in the NHL, like Berkeley Catton is one of the most fun players to watch because he's just crazy good in transition. He is so good when the puck falls on his stick. He's manipulative of the defenseman. He does such a good job at finding the best path to the net, whether it's with a little slip pass, the 1-2 passing he likes to do with his wingers. His hands are incredible, and he's just able to be productive from anywhere. He's kind of the complete package, save for the size and, like we said, that extra gear of speed. He's good defensively. He's responsible when it comes to being in the right spot. The only thing that I want to see more from is exactly what you said. He's not physically engaged enough defensively. He will let some plays get past him because he doesn't step into a guy or because he's avoiding the conflict. I think his stick is very good defensively. I think the rest of his defensive game needs to come and catch up to it. But when his defensive physicality starts to ramp up and he's able to defend with more than just his stick and passing lanes, I think sky's the limit for him. There's a chance Calgary's drafting their future number 1 center, and again, they've done such a good job to me, the Calgary Flames, at the end of this season, where I think they recognize that this group of players. If there was a Stanley Cup window, it's not it's not with this group of players right now where they're at. So they did an excellent job selling, and they've stocked up that prospect cupboard. And I think adding Catton to that group that already includes a very good Matt Coronado and a Connor Zary who took a huge step this year. Catton, I think, is just he's the gem that's going into this group where he could really just take the bull by the horns and lead this group of Calgary Flames. And I think Calgary would be so lucky to get him at 9. How about you for
Right.
Calgary? Calgary at 9, Jeremy.
At 9 we have a guy who you're probably thinking if I forgot him or not. I have him there. He's there at 9. I've got Artem Levshinov. Um, I you're gonna notice a trend with me, especially with defensemen. When there's a lot of question marks and a lot of stuff that are weird that I'm not sure on, um, I tend to be a little more conservative and maybe pick other guys that I prefer. Because I always come back with because obviously scouting from like your couch and being the head scout of an NHL team is two very different things. And I always have in mind if you're if it's your job to pick for your NHL team at nine or whatever wherever you are, and you've got all the pressure in the world of all your fan base listening to you, and just gonna judge all your picks, all the history of all your picks. You don't want to fail. So I always tend to maybe wait a little more uncertainty for especially for defensemen. Um, and Lev Shunov is a very, very interesting case. 18 months ago he was playing in Belarus, which is a very low level of hockey. Um, Now he's in the NCAA being an amazing two-way defenseman. Um, but when you look at him play, the way he plays the game, um, in the two ways, it's just this year. When you watch him earlier on in the year, in the first couple of games, first couple of like 10, 15 games, you'd find him often being this like he was acting like Denton Mateychuk, being literally behind the opposing team's net, being the furthest player out of all everybody in the ice. He was just pinching all the time. When he was defending the rush, he was pinching. When he was trying to keep the puck in the offensive uh, zone, he was always all the time pinching, which was giving I'm sure it was giving headache to his defensive partner. Um, it was very untranslatable and I was scared of it. And I had him around like 12, 13, 14 because I obviously he's massive. He's got some pretty good speed, north-south speed. He's got an amazing shot. He's big. There's so many things you can like about him in terms of tools. Um, but yeah, he's a scary player. And I've rewatched him about 4 or 5 times since like January. He's turned his game around. His defensive game has improved so much. He's able to really be obviously still pinches too much in my opinion. He's still very aggressive in his way of defending, but his defensive game came a long way. The way he uses his take, the way he uses his body, the way he, as I said with Dickinson, the way he doesn't let anybody get near to the goalie for the most part. Um, it really came a long way. Um, but then it exposed some other problems. He's amazing at joining the rush. That's one thing I've noticed. He's great at just jumping in the offensive uh, zone entries and creating some stuff of the in the transition game. But in terms of one-on-one skill with the puck on his stick, I'm not sure if he can adequately dig out any player in the NHL unless he really improves on it. I don't think he has like really game-breaking skill. uh, he's a very reliable when he has the buck the stick on his the buck on his stick, sorry, he's able to get some nice shots, he's able to get some nice long stretch passes, but I question the skill a little bit. I question what role he's gonna fit in the NHL a little bit. Um, I question a few stuff. Also, his skating, um, since he's so big, is I don't think his skating is that great compared to guys like Bouillon or Dickinson or Silayev or other defensemen. A lot of people say he's a very great skater. Sometimes he is, but sometimes it feels like he's getting caught a little bit, especially with the way he plays. When you looked at Nenta Mateychuk, he was flying. He could pinch because he was so quick at just getting up some speed and being able to come back just in time. Sometimes Lavshinov, he can't come back just in time. And one last thing I'll say before getting to the next pick. Um, when he played in the playoffs, I really liked the way he played. That's why I bumped him up in my top 10. He's at 9 currently. Um, the way he played was more conservative, and I liked it. I think he was able to realize that when it's time to actually lock in and not be too risky for his team, he was able to do it well. Um, so yeah, if you say that you want to pick Levchinov at 2, I wouldn't do it, but I mean I can see why. There's such a high potential with his size, with the tools, the shot, the way to play the offensive game and the defensive game. Also, again, like I said at the beginning, the way he's improved 18 months ago, I'll say it again. 18 months ago, he was playing Belarus hockey. Now he's in the NCAA, being one of the best defensemen in the entire league, in the entire NCAA. The development curve has been so crazy for him. So yeah, I see the upside. I'm just a little scared, but I think at 9 it's time to pick him. Calgary, if they just drop Noah Hannafin for to Vegas, and if I were them, I'd definitely pick Levchinov at 9 if he's still there.
Sometimes it pays to be skeptical. It's good to look into these things. And moving on to number 10 on Aiden and I's list, we have potentially I'd say not even potentially, the biggest boomer bust prospect in this draft. At one time, maybe a year, 2 years ago, Cole Iserman was a top 3 prospect a couple years back. And I've talked to a lot of people who say this guy doesn't know how to do anything but score goals. Okay, well, goals are great. We all want a goal scorer. And this guy is one of the most prolific goal scorers in the history of the U.S. National Development Program. And there are a couple of big names that he's eclipsed, like in terms of those numbers. We're talking Cole Caulfield, we're talking Phil Kessel, we're talking a lot of guys from a program that has produced no short list of NHL stars. At 10, we have a team that would probably love a goal scorer in the New Jersey Devils. And I'm not saying that because they're starving for offense. I'm saying that because if you're able to pair a pure dynamic goal scorer with a Jack Hughes, with a Nico Hischier, or maybe say on the right point on their power play or on the half wall on their power play, that's just another weapon that they have in their arsenal. But there are skeptics all over the place to the point where I've seen Cole Iserman ranked anywhere between 5 and 30. When was the last time you saw a prospect with that wide of a scope? It's absolutely ridiculous. And Aiden, do you want to take it away here on why you have Cole Iserman going to the Devils at 10?
Yeah, Cole Iserman is an extremely average hockey player in every way except for the fact that he has one of the best shots I've ever seen an 18-year-old have, 17-year-old really. Like it's on his stick, off his stick. It's bar down in the top corner every single time. Like his finishing ability is unbelievably good. And he's a project in every other way. And to me, objectively, I don't think that I would take him above 10 other players in this draft. Or sorry. I think there are more than 9 other players that I would take ahead of him if I was just giving my list. But when you look at the New Jersey Devils, is exactly what you said, James. Of all the teams picking in this top half of the first round, they're almost the one that can roll the dice on somebody like this, where their team is built. They've got young defensemen, they've got young forwards, they're looking to compete. And Cole Iserman, if he goes and he plays at Boston University and he lights it up, you could almost have the New Jersey Devils just almost getting a ringer for the Stanley Cup playoffs at the end of next season, right? That's a possibility with this guy. And I think that if you're a team and you see somebody who can almost always score at will, well, you're taking him. You're taking him and you're taking on the project of developing the rest of his game, because the upside of somebody who can literally, like I said, score at will is just too much to ignore. Um, if it's not New Jersey, I think he's gonna slip. What do you think at 10, Jeremy?
Iserman, it makes a lot of sense. 10. I have him at 11, so I'm gonna follow my list and pick the guy who I have at 10, who also sort of makes sense. If we're talking about strictly what he does on the ice. But yeah, I like the Iserman pick a lot. I'll talk about him a little more my next pick. But for now, at 10, when I watch Trevor Connolly on the ice, I think he's an amazing player. I think he's a top 10 player this year. The way he skates, he's insanely dynamic. Every time he just takes the puck, he's able to fly by everybody and just enter the offensive zone, create something off the rush. I always talk about how important the transition game is in today's NHL. You've also talked about it, Aiden. Um, but yeah, Connolly is insane at it. Earlier in the year, he was a very scary player because he was playing by himself. It felt like he wasn't very I don't know, he wasn't making a lot of passes. Um, every time he made a pass, it was kind of like to get the puck back. He entered the offensive zone. He was making a pass to teammate just to get it back and then do something. But he's really come a long way into sort of being more of a team player than a solo player, I feel like this year. Um, and I mean the time the one time he played with Iserman, I believe it was the top prospects game, the BioSteel game. It was just pure like domination from the two. It really solidified my view on him on how he's evolved into being a very team player. Well, not fully, but he's making progress towards it. Uh, the skill he has is amazing. The skating he has is simply amazing. I'd like to see a better effort in the defensive zone a little more, although it's not too bad. Um, there's not too many physical players this year, and he's not one of them, but he's not scared of it either. He was a very perimeter oriented player earlier in the year, and he's kind of learned to sort of go for more higher danger chances along the year. I found like, um, and yeah, when I talked about Catton, if you want an offensive player that's going to offer you so much like potential, so much skill, so much dynamic offensive game. Kazan's one of them, and I think Connolly's one of them as well. Um, Obviously in the real NHL, there's a lot of off ice stuff going on. There's the fact that in the U18 tournament, he made a very questionable penalty, questionable hit that cost his team the entire tournament. Uh, we don't know how he is as a person, and that's for NHL teams to figure out. Um, because we never know for anybody how he is as a how any player are as a person. So yeah, Connolly, if we see him slip, maybe that's for off ice reasons. But if we stick on how he plays on like on the ice, I think he's amazing player. And yeah, I'd be happy to pick him at 10. I think the Devils might look into trading that pick later. Um, Around the draft. Maybe there's gonna be some connection with the San Jose Sharks. Maybe the Sharks are gonna move up from 14 to 10 to pick Iserman, who's a good friend of Celebrini, also playing for BU next year. Um, so yeah, we don't know what's gonna happen with their pick. It would make sense if they trade him. Um, but yeah, Connolly's the guy I wanted to get off my list early because I think he's that good.
Okay, Jeremy, I'm going to say
Yes.
thank you for now. And we're going to hit pause on our mock draft. That was the first 10 picks. We will continue on in the next episode. So I would like to thank everybody for listening to this point. I'll turn it over to my co-host James just to send us off.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeremy. We love the insight as always, and as I've explained ad nauseum over the course of this top 10 list, this is the kind of draft where if you're unfamiliar with players, you really want to listen to some insight on each of them because say you're a fan of one of these teams, you aren't really going to be very sure with what you're getting. There's a lot of guys that are, say, the best at one thing in this draft, or they have some issues with this one area of their game. And that's why we're seeing so much variance between 2, 3, and up till 10, 11. After that, I think it's going to start to steady out a little bit, and there's going to be a little bit less of a break apart until we get to around the 20s. But I mean, it's the kind of draft where you're going to be on your toes, especially if you're a fan of hockey and not just of one specific team. If you love following prospects' journeys, this is the kind of draft where we're going to look back and these guys are going to end up all over the place. It's pure entertainment for the kind of hockey nerd that I think we cater to. So I thank you guys again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.